Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, SoGal. Today we've got another video suggestion for you guys all about the alternate history of what would have happened to India if Britain had never invaded and conquered it. Now this is one of the things that makes history so interesting, at least for me. I know I've seen books about alternate histories of this or that, and it's really crazy to think about how the world could be completely different if just one little thing hadn't happened. But if you think about it, that's kind of the story of our lives too. There's a constant game of what if that we play. What if I had just done this, or what if I hadn't done that? My life could have gone in a completely different direction. For some of you, that could be that you would be way worse off or maybe way better off. And that's kind of the question for India. What would have happened if Britain had never been an aggressor towards them? Now the thing is, I don't really know a ton about Indian history, so I hope this video kind of sets up where India was before Britain kind of came in and took over. Now my very first video on this channel was a history of India, but it was a very quick overview, and there's still a lot about India left to learn. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Millions wouldn't have died from famine. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
I haven't reacted to this channel yet.
Sometimes history seems like very unrealistic fiction. Like a private company from a small island somehow is able to conquer one of the
It's kind of how like 2020 feels a bit like unrealistic fiction.
Oldest civilizations on Earth. To us today, yeah, it doesn't seem like fiction. But even with Britain's modern equipment and exploitation of alliances during a chaotic time, it's insane that the East India Company at all was able to ever get as far as they did. In fact, it's very likely had they made one wrong move, their venture could have easily gone bankrupt.
I like this
but we're in our timeline.
Chill music right here.
Even though the East India Company and even the British Empire is long gone, the echoes of their influence remain prominent today. So what if history had gone more predictably? India just isn't controlled by Britain. But for the sake of this being an actually interesting video, let's say no European nation actually conquers India. Maybe there's the occasional European fort, but never is there direct control over most of the subcontinent.
I mean, I didn't think that there would be another European country coming in, so was there actually other European countries there in India, or threatening to conquer India if Britain didn't do it? I was just assuming that that's what this was going to be, is if Britain didn't come, then India would just be kind of left alone. So, okay. I'm gonna go back just a little bit.
Occasional European fort, but never is there direct control over most of the subcontinent. Simple enough, right? In an alternate 18th century, the Mughals would still be on their way out, British or not. The same cannot be said for the next major power, the Maratha. The Maratha Empire, as it was called, although it was more of a confederacy, rose out of rebellion against the Mughals. Really, it was fragmented between local rulers, hence the title. Without the British and Bengal waging war on the Maratha...
Wait, hence the title.
And really, it was fragmented between
the Confederacy, is that what it means?
Hence the title. Without the British and Bengal waging war on the Maratha...
Embarrassingly, I really don't know what Confederacy means. Even though I live in the former Confederate States of North America, I might have to look that one up.
The Maratha in 3 separate occasions, it's likely the Confederacy could have lasted at least another century or so. The systems they set up brought in an era of prosperity, but were fragile. The power of the Confederacy was fueled by loyalty to individual charismatic leaders than any ideology or sense of unity. Think like Charlemagne's empire, or the Mongols. Once the old guard dies, the
Two things I don't know about.
The Maratha dwindle in size, and once again the subcontinent is a tapestry of small princedoms, sultanates, and empires. This isn't to say chaos or anarchy with constant...
So basically, from what I remember from the Mughals video that I did, that was a thing quite a bit during that time, was that India would kind of split up into these different factions. So it looks like that's kind of what it's saying would happen here with the Maratha, was it the Maratha Empire? Or I don't know if they're in a confederacy, sorry.
constant warfare. It's simply going back to how historically India has always been.
Right.
Much like how Europe is split between different countries and nations. Okay, so maybe there would be some warfare. The point is, what the Mughals and British did was unite various different ethnic and language groups by force. An India formed without the boot of the British is one that is disunified and fragmented, but only because there isn't a need for that national identity of Indianness. It was a concept formed through the common interest to make the British Raj an independent state. In this alternate timeline, during the waves of 19th century nationalism, there becomes some vague notion among the elite and educated upper class that a united India would be a good dream, but the reality is far harder to implement without a common enemy. Any unification India would go through would be a bloody process. Just look at Germany and Italy. Those countries are far smaller than India. Any unification of India, if successful, isn't seen through a national identity, but just a successor to the Mughals. When this concept of national...
This is extremely interesting to me. So Indians did not really see themselves as like one cohesive people. They were just a bunch of splinter groups that could be the equivalent to different countries. You know, when people don't see eye to eye, they have different values, different cultures, different ways of living, different beliefs. It's really hard sometimes to bring all of that together and be united. I mean, we saw with the American Civil War, when we had the Confederate States and the Union still, I mean, it took a lot of people dying, like 750,000 people had to die in order to reunify the country. So on the one hand, Britain's not, you know, in India, you know, committing all of these atrocities or whatever they did, because I don't really know exactly what the British did in India to the Indians, but it looks like a lot of people would have died still, because that's really how history goes, right? It's just a bunch of people killing each other.
National identity does eventually arise. It'd be among smaller regions, with perhaps even already tiny Indian states balkanizing themselves just like Austria-Hungary did after World War I. This leaves a question. Would India ever unify? This is going to sound counterproductive to the points I just made, but yes, maybe. Just not in the way that we have India today. India isn't ever officially a country, but the concept of India is created near the modern day as a system of alliances, much like the EU. Cooperation is seen as much more beneficial and keeps their states from being trampled on by larger outside influences. However, this is implemented.
Never mind, I just said something stupid. Not like the Middle East. They don't have alliances like the EU, like he was talking about. I was thinking more of just like a region.
The concept of this alternate India is born without the overall threat of a European
game footage
empire, meaning situations like a Muslim Pakistan and Hindu India don't happen. There would be various states that either favor Islam, Hinduism, or perhaps just have a mix of both. And since the British don't create what is now Pakistan's western border, the territory of the Pashtun is never simply split in half. Still is going into a world on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution. So what do?
India and the Industrial Revolution.
India would not modernize like Europe did, even if it was not under the control of Europeans. This has nothing to do with culture or philosophy, but simply population and economics. Northern India has always been one of the most heavily populated regions in the world, and with such a high population, labor was cheap, wages were low, everyone needed a job. Meanwhile in Britain, the population was far smaller, and not only did they have an abundance of coal to fuel new innovations, but higher wages actively encouraged business owners to invest in machines that would replace their workers and save money. Innovation, especially with industrial...
Yeah, I never thought about that. Necessity is the mother of all invention. When you have a bunch of people that are willing to work for dirt cheap for you, there's no need to innovate. I never thought about that before. That's a very interesting concept. See, I need to learn more about economics and how exactly all of that works. I did take economics at, in college, or university for people outside of the United States, but it never was really my strong suit. But I guess economics and history kind of go hand in hand because they affect each other a lot.
Industrialization came out of the need to make profit and avoid those high wages. India didn't have this luck. A textile machine would put far more Indians out of work than Europeans. Laborers out of work due to machines revolt against their rulers, and rulers don't want that. For a while, India wouldn't have industrialized as fast as Europe or East Asia. However, at least compared to our timeline, it would be far more wealthy. It'd still have the products like cover, at least compared to our timeline, it would be far.
Look at that. What in the world? Is this like an elephant ride type thing in India? Because like we have, like in my city, we'll have like horse and carriages that will take you downtown, like on little rides and stuff. Is that kind of what this is? But it just seems really bizarre to me to be walking down the street and there's an elephant. Like, shouldn't that be at a zoo or out in the field somewhere?
Be far more wealthy. It'd still have the products like cotton, silk, textiles, and tea to sell to traders. It's just this time, the profits would go to the hands of the rulers, or at least merchants, in Indian states themselves. There is, however, one main downside to not
Isn't that how it usually happens in a lot of countries?
European nations could simply fight a war more efficiently. I think just as East Asia learned following defeats from Western empires, industrializing allows you to have a modern military, and that'd be a question many states across the subcontinent would begin to ask themselves.
Maybe that is one reason why the British Empire, to answer my own question from one of my previous videos, was so dominant around the world. Now, I would think that they would have a harder time with European and American countries because those countries would also be industrialized and would have modern warfare, modern weapons, and so forth. But once you get outside of that region, then you're probably not going to have a lot of industrialized armies around the world, and so I would imagine that they would be very easy to overcome. I'm gonna back up just a tad bit here.
Defeats from Western empires, industrializing allows you to have a modern military, and that'd be a question many states across the subcontinent would begin to ask themselves. Alright, I know it's absurd that the British just avoid India altogether, but in this alternate timeline, let's just say that their only relationship to India is mutual trade. This way, their market still gets those leaves without the whole conquering part. Simple enough, but buying and trading for goods from another party is far more expensive than owning production yourself. Without the EIC to force Indians to plant certain types of cash crops, prices go up. And in the mercantile world, having things like people planting food to survive or fairly dealing in a foreign market is just bad business, discouraging investment from home. So from an economic standpoint,
I've been lost for the last 20 seconds in this video. It's getting into economics, not my strong suit. We're gonna have to back this up again. I gotta watch this again and try to figure it out, because I didn't really get any of that.
Just avoid India altogether. But in this alternate timeline, let's just say that their only relationship to India is mutual trade. This way, their market still gets those leaves without the whole conquering part. Simple enough, but buying and trading for goods from another party is far more expensive than owning production yourself. Without the EIC to force Indians to plant certain types of cash crops, prices go up. And in the mercantile world, having things like people planting food to survive or fairly dealing in a foreign market is just bad business, discouraging investment from home.
Okay, I think I got it. So I didn't catch, when I heard it the first time, I didn't catch the EIC, the East India, is that the East India Trading Company, basically? Them, like, forcing Indians to, it sounds pretty much like the American South, when we tried to force slaves to, like, pick cotton and stuff. So if you don't have that going on, then there's not a product being produced at a quantity that you need, and so, yeah, I would see why that's bad business. I got it.
So from an economic standpoint, the crown never has its jewel. That geopolitical position of Britain as the massive power it was in the 19th century is gone. Without Indian cotton, Does the British textile industry just never grow? Well,
Indian cotton. I know that England imported a lot of cotton from the American South as well, and that's why they kind of backed the South in the Civil War. So I'm assuming that that was kind of going on at the same time as this. So were they importing cotton from both America and India? See, after watching enough of these videos, some of this stuff is starting to kind of sink in a little bit, and I'm starting to put some pieces together, which is really cool. Now, I'm just skimming the surface. I still feel like I know nothing, but I have made a lot of personal progress, I feel like, in kind of watching these videos over the past week. Also, that cotton kind of looks like a white broccoli stick.
Indian cotton. Does the British textile industry just never grow? Well, no, it would still exist. It'd just be smaller, more reliant on American imports. The raw goods
I should have just let the video play.
Receives is just shifted. The main change is profit. There are less cheap exports from India.
Okay, so here are the elephants again. So this is getting into more of like Indian culture and stuff that I don't know about. People riding the elephants, or is this like a taxi thing, or is it just a for fun ride thing?
Take advantage of, which means less wealth to spend on things that do affect history. War, global policy, empire building. I could talk about this a lot, but we both know that you don't want me talking for 12.
So the British Empire also would have been hugely affected by not invading India. I didn't think about it that way. I was thinking about the effect that it would have on India, but I did not even begin to think about the effect it would have on Britain. So Britain wouldn't have been as wealthy, and their empire wouldn't have been as expansive.
For 20 minutes about British textiles, so let's move on to something else. Without having access to the poppy fields of Bengal, the British don't have the leverage to sell opium to the Chinese market. Or more specifically, create one of the largest drug smuggling operations in history, because the only thing the Chinese would buy for the British was opium. So yes, while there are no opium wars,
I've heard about
this change would be that drastic. Britain still has that technological advantage, and could just barge in with their modern military and demand China concede to their demands anyway. Remember that famine that killed 10 million Bengalese? Well, such a situation left the East India Company almost bankrupt. To save the company, Parliament implemented a tax on East India Company tea to the Americas. The colonists did not like this, of course, and started
maybe this is where the tea company thing came in that I thought existed at one point. Maybe he's about to say it, I don't know. But yeah, I thought that there was something related to a company and tea here in America. I don't know.
Smuggling Dutch tea instead in protest. Parliament allowed the company to sell tea directly to the Dutch.
We smuggled in Dutch tea?
The colonists did not like this, of course, and started smuggling Dutch tea instead in protest. Parliament allowed the company to sell tea directly to the colonies, still at a tax. And to the colonists, this was seen as a monopoly on trade, and one that hurt local smuggling of Dutch tea. Long story, incredibly short, this was what led to the Boston Tea Party. In a weird twist of fate, if Britain didn't have India...
I don't really know all the details behind the Boston Tea Party. I mean, I know what happened, but I don't really know what kind of led up to it, other than there was a tax on tea. But I had no idea about all the Dutch smuggling in of tea. See, there's a lot about American history I don't know either. It makes me... I'm really kind of sad, actually.
Yeah, there would never have been a Boston Tea Party. Does this change a lot for the American Revolution? No.
Wow.
There are still like 12 other reasons why America would have rebelled. But I thought it was an interesting...
I was about to say, oh, maybe America or maybe the United States wouldn't have existed. But yeah, he's right. There's a lot more reasons why we probably would have.
An interesting fact and couldn't really fit it in anywhere. Removing India
I like
from
all
the
of his
British
music choices.
Takes the engine out of the car. I don't know if there would have been an empire without it. It fueled the growth. And really, by me imagining Britain without India, it's the world without the British Empire, which is a whole other scenario in itself. It could be a situation where the balance of European powers is shifted so much that the First World War never happens. Or perhaps if there is a great conflict, Britain isn't in the winning favor. As for India themselves, into this modern world, the industrialization process would come eventually, dramatically shifting Indian society, but it'd be a change by India. It wouldn't be an India as we know it, but a system of alliances, all acting independent from one another, but occasionally uniting. An alternate timeline where really any path for the subcontinent is possible. Like I said, the only true thing to predict is millions don't die from famine. This is Cody of Alternate History Hub.
Yeah, so I guess there's more about Indian history that I need to learn about, like the famine. I'm assuming that that was kind of instigated by the British somehow. Man, there are so many different angles to think about in this video. I didn't even think about it affecting the British Empire, which would have affected America, which might have affected whether or not the world wars happened. I mean, you can just start snowballing everything. That's why this alternate history is so fun to think about. And it's why history is so fun too, is because you can kind of see the cause and effect of things throughout human existence. But I've heard that modern day India is called emerging India, is that correct? I've seen that term around online in various places, and I was having a hard time during my History of India video trying to come up with a term for what I was trying to say, but I think I was trying to say emerging India. I know that things like engineering and software development, technology, that type of stuff is really starting to gain a foothold in India. They're starting to modernize more and compete more with the West, but I really don't know exactly where things stand and where they are compared with the West. So maybe that will be a topic for future videos. We'll look at emerging India and kind of look more at the culture of it and see what effects the British Empire actually had on India for real, because it did happen and now we all have to deal with the consequences of it. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Do you agree with this video? Do you think that India would have gone the way that this person suggested? What other effects on the world can you think of that would have happened if Britain had never invaded India? Again, I'm trying to learn from you guys, so if you can answer any of my questions, if you have anything to add or to correct me on, please comment down below. I always read your comments and I really appreciate them. Also, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. I've got plenty more coming to you, and as always, stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.